cool stuff. So
yeah, it was great.
So let's kind of tell us a little bit about, well, first off, what is Braintrain Centers, Inc.? What is that? And then I want to get to kind of your story, how you got there. But what is Braintrain Centers, Inc.?
Okay, Braintrain Centers is a company I created in 2013, and it is a neurofeedback therapy clinic. And like we mentioned, I have my 7th office opening. It's actually, I'm in Atlanta, but I will be opening next week in Delaware, Georgetown, Delaware. I have a connection to a psychologist up there. And so, yeah, we do neurofeedback therapy. That's it. That's what we do. And then we combine with other professionals to refer clients out for other services.
Okay. So we'll dive into neurofeedback therapy in a bit.
Okay.
Obviously it has to do with the brain, but so yes. How did you, so you're centered mostly in, where are your locations right now?
Okay. So my locations are places that I've lived and where I live besides Delaware. So I am in Atlanta, just north of the city in Marietta, Kennesaw. Okay. So I have 4 offices here now. This is where I started. I'm originally from San Diego. So I have an office in San Diego with a partner, and then an office in Las Vegas with my sister-in-law, who is from Mexico City, but lives in Vegas. So we see all Spanish-speaking clients there, which is amazing. Okay. Yeah.
San Diego, Vegas, and then 4 in and around Atlanta and in Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah, Bruce is asking with Speakeasy. So Bruce and Carrie, what we're talking about here is Steve Sims, who is an entrepreneur. And if you haven't seen it, go all the way back on my high performance calls, watch the call I did with him. When he hosts a kind of small mastermind, he calls it a speakeasy because he doesn't really tell you where it's going to be. He doesn't tell you what it's going to be. He doesn't tell you anything other than the date and the city. And he goes, here's where we're going to go do it. Here's how much it costs. And that was legit. You probably signed up the same way I did. Like, it was a picture of Texas with the state or with the city Austin marked. Here's the dates. Pay me. And that was it. There was no other information. It was just show up. You're going to get into a room with a lot of cool people. So, she trusted some other entrepreneurs that pointed her in that direction. I kind of been following Steve the same way. So that's where we ended up. So, okay. 6 locations around the country. So first off, congratulations, because that's huge. I mean, most people just getting one company up and running and profitable is a big deal. For you to then multiply that into, a number of different locations, especially in such a short time. So kudos to you. How did you go? You said you were in San Diego, Vegas, and you started to mention to me a little bit earlier, just part of your story. Like, you left Vegas to go to Georgia in kind of a rough situation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, just real quick. I won't take too long. I'm originally born and raised in San Diego. And in San Diego, everyone's like, oh, beautiful San Diego, best city. There are actually some ghetto areas of San Diego. And that's where I was raised. I was the only little white girl in this area of San Diego to a single mom. I'm going to get real personal. My dad was a heroin addict, in and out of my life. Showed up every once in a while with stolen goods, just real rough upbringing. And so I've always just been a go-getter, but I never had the background or the education of how to own a business, but I knew that my calling was to help people heal. And so my goal was to become a chiropractor. Well, my mom's originally from Atlanta. The best chiropractic school is here. So she was here. I was 24 at the time. I went from San Diego and met this man in Las Vegas and started dating him, who ended up becoming physically and emotionally abusive. And I've never been in a situation like that personally. I've seen it, but I never dealt with it. So after 9 months of going back and forth between Vegas and San Diego, my best friend said, you're being an idiot, and I'm buying you a ticket to Atlanta. Go be with your mom. She was taking care of my grandfather at the time, who's now passed, but she was here. And so she bought me the ticket, and I came to Atlanta with a suitcase, and I stole the dog. I stole the dog from the guy. Good. So I came with a suitcase and a dog. And at first I was just like, I'll be back in a month to San Diego. Well, I ended up staying here, starting my whole life over. Again, I was 24, but I'm not the type of person to depend. Like, I didn't depend on my mom. So I stayed with her just for a few weeks and immediately got to work, applied for chiropractic school because that's what I thought I wanted to do, and just started life. And really with nothing. So I ended up getting my own apartment, went to college, the chiropractic college here, Life University. I did a year of chiropractic and decided I don't want to be a chiropractor, even though I love it. And that's where I found neurofeedback, because I was working for a chiropractor that had it in his office. So I took my last student loan check, which was $4,000. I had no money saved, nothing in the bank. I took $4,000 student loan check. And I was like, I'm going to start this business now. And I started my business.
So hold on, you were in this other chiro's clinic and they were offering it and you're like, I'm going to get into this business?
Exactly. I was like, can I get certified? So I got certified to become a neurofeedback technician in his office. I worked for him for a year and a half, helped him grow that side of his business. I was like, I love this so much. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I took my student loan money that I was going to start a master's program and started my business instead.
Good. Yeah. You know, invest in yourself in a different way, right? You kind of recognize that things were shifting. So when you were so explain to me a little bit more in depth what neurofeedback therapy is. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. And some of you may have heard of it, or you may have heard of biofeedback. So it's been around since the 60s, and it got very popular over the 80s and 90s. Biofeedback did. And then some people were like, this is a little too woo-woo, but it's not really woo-woo at all. It's actually very science-based. What it is neurofeedback is a form of biofeedback. Biofeedback in general helps us be able to control our temperature, our heart rate. Like when we're stressed and anxious, you could hook up sensors to your heart rate or to your arms, and you could decrease your heart rate and relax. So that's biofeedback. Neurofeedback directly helps us retrain our brain waves. So what we do is an actual brain recording. Let me show you the cool thing that you were talking about. Hold on.
Okay, so she's talking about, so I was talking to these guys the other day about how subconsciously our brain regulates all of these different things throughout our body, right? Our temperature, our heartbeat, all of these different chemical reactions throughout the body, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But that happens subconsciously. So what you're talking about is this map that you're going to show us, or this process, neurofeedback helps map out how our body is doing that. Does that
kind of
close?
Let me explain it this way. We have our mind and we have our brain. So neurofeedback, we're working the actual connections in the brain. It does obviously work the subconscious. There is a form of neurofeedback that only works the subconscious with your eyes closed. But this, when we do a QEEG, we're finding out what your brain is actually doing at the electric level. So this is what they use in the hospital to check for seizures. And it was actually created in the 60s for seizure disorder. So it's actually to help create better function in the electric signals in the brain. That's what we do.
Yeah, the neurotransmitters, those electric chemical signals going back and forth, the myelin and everything else, and how your brain is actually functioning.
Exactly. So we check that first, and then we do a therapy, which is the neurofeedback, and we hook the people up to sensors, and their brain gets actual feedback to retrain itself to work at a faster or slower pace. So you guys
slower. So it's not, I'm guessing there's an optimal range, and you're trying to fit within that optimal range.
At specific times, there's an optimal range of speed the brain works at specific times. For example, when it's time to go to sleep, our brain should go into very slow wave activity. It's called delta theta waves. So if you are having trouble with sleep, you could train your brain to increase delta theta when it's sleepy time. You don't want to be in your sleepy wave activity during the day, because guess what that is? That's attention issues like ADHD. Here's the thing. Everyone thinks they have ADHD and they say, my mind never shuts down. I can't focus. I have ADHD because my mind never shuts down. That's not ADHD. That's too fast of waves that causes anxiety, which then causes attention issues. Very different symptoms and very different causes.
Okay. Because I talked with these guys a bit, I've done, and I always preface this, guys, by saying anytime we talk about some of this stuff, I am not a doctor and I'm not a clinical technician or anything. If you think you've got something, make sure you get diagnosed by proper, individuals in your life. But I've talked with them a little bit about ADHD and adult ADHD, especially because a lot like the presence of ADHD in entrepreneurs is much higher than regular people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so Forrest is asking about people with Alzheimer's. So we'll
Alzheimer's.
get so
Yeah.
But so there's what you're talking about is it's not just, hey, my brain's super active, it won't turn off. That's not necessarily ADHD. But it's still something that kind of causes attention deficit problems.
Yes.
The root cause just may not be actual ADHD.
Exactly. And this is the thing. If you take a drug for ADHD, when your brain is already going too fast and over aroused is what we call it, you're going to have worse symptoms and the medication's not going to work because ADHD meds are stimulant drugs. So why would you stimulate a brain that's already overstimulated? That's not good. That's going to cause more issues.
Okay. So we'll get to the Alzheimer's in a second. So let me ask you, if we're doing the initial assessment, and guys, obviously her website is right there. She's got facilities, Georgia, San Diego, and Vegas, if you want to do that. If not, I'm going to talk with her in a minute. We'll get some information because she's got some units that are available to rent like in home where you can do some of this. So we'll talk to you about it. So how do you do an initial assessment? Let's say I'm sitting here and I feel like it may be ADHD. It may be just my brain is going too crazy. It's hard for me to focus.
Yeah.
But I'm a high achiever normally. Like, hey, I think neurofeedback would be good. What does that process look like? What would you do with me?
Initial assessment is done with this weird looking thing. And this is what we were talking about at Steve Sims that I brought to show. This is a QEEG cap. We put it on the head. We put some EEG gel, which is similar to like a, sonogram gel. And then it does get the hair kind of gooey, but we need that for the electric conductor, right? Okay. So then we record 12 different areas of the brain and we're recording 4 major brainwave activities. And we're doing this with your eyes closed and then we're doing it with the eyes open. So it does not hurt. We're not putting anything in you. We're not taking anything out of you. We're just recording those brainwave activities.
The actual electric waves that are moving through.
Yes, how the brain is actually how those neurons are firing in the brain at 12 different locations, because certain locations should be a certain speed. And like you said, like there's a norm and different ages have different norms. Kids do have a lot slower activity than adults do. So if an adult
have slower activity than adults do,
they do. That's why they sleep more. And that's why they need to sleep more, because it's normal for them to have slower wave activity because their brain's growing and healing. Yeah.
Because the neurotransmitters are still kind of solidifying. So the electric pulses aren't quite as fast. And,
yes. So once we get that, we upload that recording to what's called a normative database. It's a database with thousands and thousands over all these years of regular and abnormal brain activity. And that person's recording is going to be compared to the norm. And then we're going to see, do you want me to show you real quick what a picture looks like?
Yeah,
I could share a screen, what like a QEEG looks like really quick.
Okay, go ahead.
It'll just take 2 seconds. Let me pull it up.
Got one. Is this interesting, guys, at all? Is anybody do you guys like this stuff? Hopefully, yes.
Have questions. Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen and I'll show you. I'm going to show you mine because I don't want to break anyone's HIPAA. Because I do this for myself too. So once we get a recording, it shows us a lot of information, but this is the cool stuff you get to see. This is my actual brain function, and gray is normal and reds and blues are abnormal. So they're either some areas are working too fast and some areas are working too slow. And that's what we're finding out. What areas are what we call dysregulated. So for example, see this red all here in the back of beta. Beta is a really fast brainwave activity. And I have a lot of it in the back of my brain. So when I go to sleep or try to go to sleep, my brain turns on, which a lot of entrepreneurs deal with. That's one of the biggest issues for us as entrepreneurs. We're so overwhelmed, stressed, thinking about everything we have to do the next day that it causes the back of the brain when it's time to go to sleep to turn on, because it's like the only time we actually do sit down or lay down, and then our brain goes crazy. So that actually causes insomnia, anxiety, stress.
Okay.
So
That's great. Yeah. So go over this. And then the first page that you had up when you started sharing, it had like symptoms and stuff at the bottom. So, okay. So looking at this, I can come. So will this, if I tell you, look, I think I'm having problems with, motivation and, I get frustrated with things. I'm disorganized. So will this tell you
if your brain is, so what happens? You see this CEC and EEG?
Right.
EEG is what we do on you. The CEC is what you tell us you think you're having problems with. So before someone comes to me, they have to fill out all this paperwork.
Sure.
But what it's doing is it's comparing. All right, you're telling me attention is a big issue by the way you answered those questions. And the EEG is saying it's a moderate issue. And maybe there's something else that's causing more of that issue, like processing, verbal processing.
Or the disorganization is causing you to have trouble with.
Yeah. And all of these symptoms correlate to certain areas of the brain that light up here and certain ways that our brain works from right to left and all this. So when I sit down with a client and I go over the results, it's about a 20-minute,
like a consult. Yeah.
Yeah. We call it a report of finding. And then it tells us certain things that we need to do for the brain. It'll give us supplements based off the brain function. So it gives us a lot of information that we could use to help our clients get better brain health in general.
So let's talk to me about that here for a second. About
Want me to stop sharing?
I'll stop. We may come back to that though. That's super cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It is cool.
Especially for opening up your brain to us.
Yes.
Talk about pulling back the curtain a little bit.
I know.
That's like when you do the, have you ever done that in connection with like the Kobe exam or one of the other self-awareness tests and like try to compare the two? Have you ever done that? Talking about?
No.
I think that'd be interesting for me. I like a lot of those, I talk with these guys a lot about being self-aware. And so it's physically, but then also, doing these other things and trying to get an idea. Because like you said, sometimes we'll say, oh, this is my problem. And then we do some kind of exam for ourselves and we go, actually, this is what you've got. And, you need to peel back the layers of the onion a little bit and realize what it is. Right. So you mentioned, so I know, and maybe what we'll have them do is if they come in, do you have when they fill out a form, like, referred by or how'd they find out? We should have them put Andrew in there just because a couple of people said they might apply the Atlanta office. Anyway, let's assume, because I know we've got some people that are like, the UK or Ireland or South Africa and all over, right? We've got people from everywhere here. You mentioned supplements. I think I heard you say, right? There's brain health in general. So let's assume, what's something we can do that will help our brain health, regardless of whether or not we're able to get into another clinic in the area that we're in. What can we do for ourselves that will help us with overall brain health?
Right. Good question. So of course, neurofeedback is what we do. So people do come to our office 2 to 3 times a week. People can rent home units, do it from home. But other than that, the things that we highly recommend, depending on what the issue is. So for example, if it's a concussion, right, we're going to recommend things like very good diet, things like sugar decrease, right? And a lot of people don't realize how much sugar their intake. It doesn't mean like, oh, I don't eat cookies and ice cream, but do you eat pasta and breads? And do you drink?
So excessive like glucose, carbs and stuff. And
yeah. I mean, we really have to pay attention to that. And we have to be realistic and do things that we can do in small doses, just even little steps. Like, for example, I had a teenage girl here the other day and her mom was like, she drinks 2 Cokes a day. And I was like, let me ask you, just try to get down to 1 Coke a day and then maybe 1 Coke every other day until you're not craving anymore, because sugar causes inflammation in the brain and the body. Sugar's our worst enemy. So definitely decrease the sugar, increase veggies, increase protein, things like that. I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian, but we know that that's good for the brain.
Do you ever do work with, just because I've done some in the past and I've had some guys on here talking about it too, but nutritional microscopy, live blood analysis stuff, where they're looking at, go ahead.
I was going to say, I personally don't, but I recommend a lot of my clients to go do that. There's a hormone and blood center that I use close by.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, if you're not dealing with sugars the right way, or even proteins and fats, sometimes you just don't digest it the right way. So I always talk to people about enzymes. Is there any other like does vitamin D or omegas or, like, are there basic supplements? So hydration is number one. You said, like, make sure you're getting your fluids, staying away from overly processed sugars in any capacity as much as possible, right? Kind of keeping things in line there. What else can we do from that standpoint from a brain health?
So we highly recommend, obviously, vitamin D, all the good vitamins. I'm going to tell you, if you're having sleep trouble and you're taking melatonin and it's not working, you're probably taking it too much. Melatonin, a lot of people take way too much and it does the opposite. Magnesium is actually better for sleep than melatonin. And melatonin shouldn't be taken every day. And you should not take more than 3 milligrams of it. So I know sleep's a big issue for entrepreneurs. That's why I'm mentioning that. So really check into what you're putting in your body. Not only supplements supplements that we put in our body. If you're buying supplements from Target, Costco, Walmart, you're wasting your money. I'm going to tell you right now, like, that's made mostly of petroleum. You're not actually taking it like in a good way. Your body's not absorbing it. So you need to find either a local chiropractor. It's not processing it. And that's why when you take supplements and you urinate and your pee is bright yellow, you have not actually taken in any of the vitamins.
That's your vitamin B going right on out the
exactly,
as it were. Yeah.
So a good way to do that is, if you're not good at taking supplements, for me, I'm horrible at it. So I go to a local hydration IV place every 2 weeks, and I do like their immune IV with the vitamin D shot. And it's a little extra money, but I enjoy it. It's an hour for me.
I mean, it may be a little bit extra, but if you're not getting anything out of all of the other supplements, if I'm spending $200 every couple of months or something on all these other supplements, but I'm really just peeing them out, what's it matter? Right?
Yeah, true.
So it's getting the other stuff. So, okay.
So when you're looking for supplements, go to a professional that's been trained. I will tell you, and I'm not like, I don't even sell the supplements, but Standard Process is a supplement. If you find like a local chiropractor or some doctors carry it, it's made of real food and real animal product, like bovine liver, things like that your body can absorb and actually get benefit from.
Michael's asking kind of about that. Do the naturally derived supplements have an advantage over synthetic ones?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And you also want to get tested to make sure you're taking the right supplements. So you might want to check, like, you could do hair mineral tests where they cut a piece of your hair, send it off to a lab, and see what minerals and heavy metals are in your hair. Your hair is actually a great way to test for that, because it's kind of like a tree trunk. It holds history.
Yeah.
And that's where it's almost sometimes better than blood tests.
Well, and that's where, and there's different kinds of blood tests too, guys. And we've talked about this. And again, she's not offering it. I'm not offering it. I don't have anyone directly to recommend you to, but like live blood analysis is different than a different blood test, because they're looking actively at, the red and white blood cells and how they're moving through the body, like right then, to see how things are going. And then there's other things like she's talking about with the hair, where you can tell what's in the system. And then you have natural supplements and other supplements, and sometimes synthetic supplements are fine as long as it's done with quality. And there's I think one of the biggest things that we can say in this day and age, we try and bring information, and I try and bring experts like Melissa and others on here, guys, but you got to do some of your own research, right? Research isn't just important to do your marketing and build your business. You've got to check out things for yourself. And health, like, if you're going to invest time in researching anything, your health should be one of the most important things that you do. So, okay. So brain health, yes, get sleep, get water, take the right supplements to do all of that. So let's say we do our initial consultation. And then you said, 2 to 3 times a week, people are coming in. What kind of therapy are you doing? Is it considered cognitive therapy? Is it considered behavioral? Is it like, what kind of therapy is going on once they've done the initial consultation?
Okay. So that's where the cool stuff is. We use technology. I'm not a counselor. I mean, I have a master's in addiction counseling, but I don't do it because I do neurofeedback. So the therapy is neurofeedback. Okay. So what happens, and I'm going to explain it to you, but when you, if you guys, I think I have a video on my website, but if not, I could put the YouTube video in of me hooking.
There's 3 or 4 kind of basic videos on there, guys, that like 2 to 3 minute clips that explain some of the stuff that we're talking about.
Did you see the one of me, Andrew, talking and putting the sensors on the little girl?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's on my website then. So I'm going to explain it, but I'm going to encourage you that on my website, you just go watch the 2-minute video so you truly understand. This is where like the weird woo-woo stuff, people are like, what? But I'm going to explain it to you as simple as possible. What happens is we do that brain map. It tells us which area of the brain needs to be retrained, is what we say. Like it needs to either train, it's Braintrain Centers Inc.com. Somebody asked about the website. So we need to increase certain brain activity or decrease it, or both. We need to do, decrease slow, increase fast, things like that. So what happens, the client comes in. I'm going to show you my little office space. See the TV there and the little recliner? Okay.
Yeah.
So the person comes in, they sit in the recliner. I put 2 little sensors pasted on the scalp, and they're sensors. They're not like shockers or anything like that. Put 2 little sensors on the scalp. Let's say we're training the frontal lobes. So they're going to be just pasted on with electropaste. Mm-hmm. The person's going to watch the screen in front of them. And as they're watching the screen in front of them, we're monitoring their brainwave activity. Then our technology is sending information to the screen in front of them and telling them where is that brainwave activity at. And when it's in the correct pattern that we want, the screen is nice and bright. They're watching their favorite show, their favorite movie, whatever it is. They're watching TV pretty much. So as they're watching it, the brain goes into the pattern we want more of. So the screen turns bright. So the brain is actually controlling the brightness and the darkness of the screen in front of them. You guys ever learn about Pavlov's dogs?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's what we're doing. We're using operant classical conditioning to retrain the actual behavior of the brain patterns by giving a positive or negative visual feedback on the screen in front of them, all controlled by the brain activity.
Okay.
So when you saw that little video of me putting the sensors on the girl's head and then the screen in front of her turned black or bright, that was based off the brain function. Look at it like this. We're humans. We work off rewards, right? When we train a puppy to go outside and they go pee-pee outside, you give a treat, right? We're the same way. We love reward patterns. So when we get rewarded, the behavior increases.
Well, so how does this work when you send it to someone's house? How do you?
They put little sensors right on their head and they use a laptop. Yeah.
And so how you've got it set up connects with the laptop and shuts it down and turns it on?
Exactly. The software is all on the laptop. So they hook the little sensors. They do all the training on the laptop that we provide. We provide the whole set. And then we in our office, at the end of this, there are 30-minute sessions, by the way. So it's 30 minutes. Your brain does get tired. Like you physically get tired from this because your brain's trying to figure out a new way to work every time it gets that positive reinforcement. So as it does that, the brain gets tired because it's not used to working in that pattern.
So what would be a way to do, and I want to get deeper into kind of that. Well, let's talk about that in the process. So they come in for, how many sessions would be like an average? Hey, I'm going to need, 20, 30, 100, like how many kind of sessions are we looking at?
So on average, we don't see anyone or rent the system to anyone that can't do at least 30 sessions. And that could be 30 days. It doesn't have to be broken up. People break it up to come into the office just because of scheduling, but at home, you could do it every day up to 2 times a day. So 30 is the minimum. Now, we do have to consider, obviously, history, the age, medication, if their goal is to come off the medication, if they're on it. Trauma history makes a big difference in our brain function. So some of those people do need up like 40, 60. I think the most I've ever worked with someone was 80, and that was post-concussion.
Okay, so we got some questions I want to kind of roll through. So we've got, we've talked earlier about ADHD. Someone was asking about autism and addiction. How does neurofeedback therapy work with those kinds of elements, ADHD, autism, and then addiction? Like what's it helping that person's brain do in order to do that?
So it's no matter what symptom we're working with, we do the brain map and we're finding out where the symptoms are coming from, the core issue, which part of the brain is going to be your core issue and how it's functioning. So the Pediatric Association has put neurofeedback and biofeedback as a #1 therapy for ADHD for children. It's up there at the same with medication, which we all know and I'm not against medication, guys. It's just I have two little girls, and I know that, if I took them to get diagnosed, they would be diagnosed. So the problem is it's overdiagnosed and over-medicated, especially for our kids, which is very frustrating as a parent and as a provider that offers other solutions. So it is great that the American Pediatric Association has claimed this as a #1 therapy. So it's a lot of research behind it. Like I said, it was created for seizure disorders to start with. So I've actually helped people with the neurofeedback decrease seizures. There's a specific brain activity at the top of the head that we could increase, and it will decrease seizures. Amazing.
You have a story about someone like that came in with seizure? Yeah,
okay.
Can you share that?
Really quick.
Yeah.
11-year-old boy, his family moved from Florida to Atlanta, and they lived about an hour and a half from me. I don't know if you guys have been up there, but it's by the Mall of Georgia. Anyways, hour and a half away. They did surgery on their kid's brain in Florida because the surgeon and the doctors all said that the seizures would stop if they removed this little part of the brain. Like, what? Wow. Crazy, scary stuff, right? Yeah. So then, of course, seizures didn't stop. They actually got worse. Okay. He was having a seizure every hour for a minute straight, every day, every hour for a minute straight. So then they found neurofeedback. They started researching everyone in Atlanta. They finally got to me because most providers only want to work with ADHD. And I prefer not working with ADHD because I don't want to work with the parents. But I'm like, sure, I'll take you guys. Like, it's created for seizures. I know that it's going to work for seizures. Well, they would come in 3 times a week because we didn't have home units at the time. This was when I first started my business. They came in 3 times a week, an hour and a half away, would drive 3 times a week to my office. At the end of 40 sessions, he had only 2 seizures a week.
That's amazing.
From every day, every hour. I had another lady, 24 years old. She had to wear a helmet because she had seizures so bad. A licensed counselor referred her to me for her anxiety and stress. Ended up not having to wear the helmet ever again. No more seizures for her.
I mean, that's completely life-changing. Is that something? So once he went through the 40 sessions, was there a maintenance schedule? Is like he keeps coming as well?
No. I followed up to see if they needed to come, and they're so good. Like, and this was years ago. I mean, that's what excites me. And that's why I love being in this profession, because, it's them healing themselves. I just have the tools for them to get that feedback that they need. And that's what makes me so happy, is like, I'm not healing them. They're healing themselves. That's the beauty and power of our bodies and our brains. And so it's exciting to be able to.
So how does that, and it is amazing. It's obvious to see you've got that passion for it, which is so cool. How does that work with like addiction?
Oh, I love it. I love working with that. Obviously, I told you guys.
Yeah, you said you had a master's with that.
Yeah, I do. And my dad was a heroin addict. And I'm going to be real personal. My sister is addicted out in San Diego still. And she has 2 girls who are my nieces that I've lived with me as teenagers up until they're adults now. And so addiction has played a big role in my life and affected my life personally. So that's another reason I got into it. One really cool story I have about that. I had a 21-year-old. His mom works at Emory, a hospital here in Atlanta. You guys probably heard of it. It's a great hospital. She works in the neurology department, and her neurologist, medical doctor, referred her to do neurofeedback for her son, who was addicted to heroin and alcohol. And at the time, he was in a halfway house. So they found me, and he came out of the halfway house, and he was coming to me also 3 times a week. I didn't have home units at the time. He had never been clean for more than a year, and he had been using since he was a teenager. This was 7 years ago. He did 60 sessions with me. He did took a little break, did some more like tune-ups, like you mentioned. But it's been 6 or 7 years now. He is still clean.
That's amazing.
I know. It's so cool. Now,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, it is amazing work, and I love it. And I do have to be realistic. I know that that's not going to be like huge testimonials like that for everyone. According to research, and from what I've seen it in my clinic, research shows 85% success rate for neurological disorders using neurofeedback. 85% is huge.
That's ridiculous. That's just amazing.
It's so ridiculous.
About, so many people on here mentioning treating the symptoms versus the actual root cause and doing all of these things. What are some other things? So I think that's Chantel. So she asked a question that kind of flows with some of the things I was talking about. So do your clients have a list of things to do to help retrain the brain? So like in the last little bit, like I'm giving these guys an affirmation challenge, and we're talking about doing these affirmations because it starts to create, positive in inner dialogue as opposed to the negative. And there's so much of that we've had in our life. And so, but the way that gets established, and I was talking about the subconscious mind, but it happens because we've created the neurological pathways to create the negativity, right? So have you looked at things like, affirmations, meditation, binaural beats, all of these different things? Have you looked at that in connection with the neurofeedback?
So I've never done like a study like before and after. I will say those are things that I recommend for my clients because that is working the mind. Remember here, as I mentioned earlier, we're working the brain, the physical brain structure, but you still have to work on your mind. And what I will say is when I get someone coming in, like I'll use for an example, I had a chiropractor that wanted to come in. Okay. Oh, sorry. I get sidetracked too with the comments. I had a chiropractor come in and he just wanted to get his brain checked, do the brain assessment. He's one of those people that was very dedicated to working on himself always. He did his yoga, he did his meditation, he eats very healthy, all that. He really dedicated. When I did a QEG on him, seriously, the best QEG I've ever seen. It was like almost all normal. Because I always make a joke. I'm like, listen, everyone's going to have some dysregulated brain areas because we live in an environment, like our environment, our food, our traumas from our past, those all affect our brain health, not just our brain function, but our mind and our subconscious. So I always say, like, if there's no way I'm not going to see like some dysregulation unless you're a Buddhist monk, like not around all the craziness, right? But this doctor who really dedicated his days to being a healthy entrepreneur, his brain looked like that. Like the only thing I could have recommended was like peak performance neurofeedback, which we do that. Like we do peak performance.
Okay, we're gonna have to get into the peak performance in a second, but I want to grab something that I think is super interesting. So you're differentiating the brain and the mind. So you're differentiating the physical aspect, physical health of the brain, and then the thoughts that we have inside, you're calling the mind, right?
Yes.
So why do you separate them? Why not just say, hey, your brain health is messing with your thoughts, it's causing you to think or do or whatever, right?
Yeah, the reason I separate them is because think about this. Think about how many people, maybe it's even you, say like, I've tried meditation, I can't do it. I've tried just to relax or put myself to sleep listening to the beats or the and that is your mind. That's your subconscious mind. And you're trying to do all these wonderful things to help it. But the actual brain, the physical brain of how it's firing isn't allowing it. So think of it like a hardware and a software of a computer.
Right.
Neurofeedback works the hardware. Let's say like you're trying to add all this wonderful software, the affirmations, the yoga, the meditation. You're adding this software onto a computer with faulty hardware. How well is that going to run? It's not going to run very well because the hardware can't process it. So we need
some of those things slowly work on the hardware as well.
It will slowly, absolutely. But that's when people get frustrated, right? Because like I said,
we want it quick.
We want quick. We want rewards, and rewards are feeling better, doing better. And so if those rewards aren't coming fast enough, that's when people give up and they're like, well, this isn't worth it. Like I'm trying everything. And so that's where I think the two absolutely need to be combined. You need to make sure your hardware can process all the wonderful software like the affirmations. I'm not saying don't do it before you do neurofeedback. Start now, obviously. Like there's people that can't afford neurofeedback or don't have access to it. So of course, do your affirmations, do your vision boards. I just had a vision board party, because I believe completely in affirmations and law of attraction.
We were talking about that. It came up yesterday. We're going to do like a vision board training tomorrow. So,
oh, nice. We did a full party. We did a virtual, it was in person, but we had people Zoom in and we're on virtually with us while we all.
So how does visualization work with brain and mind and everything else? How do you put the two together?
Well, absolutely. You visualizing what you need, what you want. I will say the most powerful way is to write things down, because the power of us physically doing it creates a new pathway. So that's very important. So, or
So
like,
it starts to create writing it out. And so visualizing it and writing it out starts to create an actual physical pathway in the brain,
yeah,
which can be helpful in the mind, is what you're saying.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
do you do that with your clients then? Do you have them kind of do something like that?
Yes, journaling, I absolutely always recommend. Now, them actually doing it is a different story.
Sure.
But
I can
most
imagine.
of
I've got these guys on
yeah,
here all the time, and I'm like, you should do this. The amount of them that actually do, that's a whole other conversation, you know.
right. Yeah. That's
Um,
where the accountability comes from. So someone did ask if it's a permanent change in the brain. Now it is neurofeedback. What you're doing with the therapy does create long-term changes. There are neurofeedback providers out there in the world that say it creates permanent changes. The reality is if you don't take care of your brain, if you get a concussion, if you have a major trauma, it's not going to get rid of those pathways, but it may create some issues with those pathways. So that's when someone might need tune
but it's
up.
like but your brain is plastic, right? They talk about neuroplasticity. So that's what allows the neurofeedback to make the change, but it's also what will allow it to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
So here's an
mess up
example.
again, as it were.
I'm not going to take on a client who is depressed and anxious, and I find out that they are living in an abusive relationship. Because when they come here, do their therapy, and then go right back to the same environment, things around you do have to change as well for the long-term changes to stick better, obviously. Right?
So your environment is just as important to your overall brain health. So what are some simple things from home I can do to help with my overall environment? You know, you mentioned we're not all, you know, monks off in a monastery. What are some things that I can do from here at home to help me get in a better place to work on my brain health?
I'm going to highly recommend this because it's something I've been working on, is communication. If you have people you live with, spouses, children, I have an 11-year-old and a 3-year-old and a husband. So there are days that I just want to go home and everyone shut up and don't talk to me, right? But then I have to remember that's my family. I love them. So being able to set boundaries and communicate in a way that they understand that you're not being selfish. Like if you get home as an entrepreneur, you've been crazy trying to do, or even you have a full-time job and you need some time to work on your business once you get home, setting that boundary of, listen, I'm going in my office for an hour and I'm going to work on this. I need you guys to all figure out what you're going to do for the hour while I'm doing this. So that's kind of stuff I'm working on. That'll help your environment. Have a place in your home that is kind of your place. And if it's not in your home, find a place. And I will obviously say exercise. You know, sometimes just taking a walk in your neighborhood by yourself is something you need to do. As an entrepreneur, I'm speaking, like in general, we all need to be healthy and physically active. But as an entrepreneur, those are the types of things that over these years I've started realizing I need to do more for myself.
Have you seen okay, so Lynn's asking about insurance, and we'll get to that. And then Victoria earlier had asked about, do they need to actually show up at your facility in order to get the at-home unit? So I'll make sure that we get those questions.
Okay.
But have you seen a difference in the evaluations that you've done with people that are doing what they can to be physically healthy and those that are just kind of living, you know, and let's call it an average lifestyle? I don't want to even say unhealthy, but average for the most part is unhealthy right now. Absolutely. Have you seen a difference?
Oh, definitely. And I even see a difference from, like, let's say it is an average lifestyle person that's coming in and I give them recommendations like do a walk or even if it's light weights, lift some weights. That's so good for your brain and for dopamine. They're doing neurofeedback. Maybe they're exercising. We do a new scan on them. We could actually see all the positive changes on the new scan that we do. So
fantastic.
That's the really cool part, is like, this person, that's when you have just great results. When you are taking those steps to work on your mind and body, and then you're coming here and exercising your brain, it's amazing results. Yeah.
So are there some things, like if I don't have, from a neurofeedback therapy perspective, if I don't have the setup, are there different training type exercises that I can do? Let's assume I'm trying to do what I can to be a little healthier, and I'm walking and I'm exercising some. I'm doing what I can to take care of my sleep a little bit more. I'm making those incremental improvements in all these other categories. Let's say I'm in, we've got people in Nigeria, South Africa, whatever, like I can't get connected to somebody that has the equipment like you do. Yeah. Is there some activity, exercise that I can do that will begin some of that kind of Pavlovian therapy without having it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It won't create that immediate reward. So I don't know if all of you guys have heard of the Amen clinics, Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a psychiatrist that's been around for years. He was on PBS back in the day, and he's a very worldwide known psychologist that does SPECT scans, but he started his whole career doing neurofeedback. I'm actually certified as an Amen brain health coach. And so a lot of what he recommends that we've learned about to create those new healthy pathways are very simple things that we all know to do. Things like doing puzzles, Sudoku. I don't know how to say it right. I think that was right. Yeah. Word searches, things not on your technology, not on your phone, writing, reading, anything that's going to create a new pathway and create positive change, right? So the affirmations, of course, but learning a new language, working on a new, anything new that you're going to learn creates new pathways in the brain. Okay. So the more positive things we learn and new things like a new language, and it's never too late to start that. I speak Mandarin Chinese because I took it in college.
Well, here we go. All right, overachieving.
I forgot a lot of it, but
so learning new things though is so difficult for so many people. What do you recommend when people are getting frustrated trying to learn something new? Especially like this is neurofeedback. You're taking a look and you're saying, look, here's things that have to change in your brain. Here's things that you need to do to work on your mind. And they come back and they're frustrated and they're tired. Like you talk about, your brain gets tired learning new things.
Yeah.
What do you tell people when they're like, I'm trying to learn something new and it's pissing me off and I'm frustrated and I'm overwhelmed and I just don't know if I'm going to see it through, blah, blah, blah.
I think one big problem that a lot of us do, especially as entrepreneurs, we want to do so much at once and then we want the results quickly. So I would say very small increments. Like I homeschool my 11-year-old girl, Mila, and yesterday she was very frustrated because she was having to work on math. So instead of an hour and a half of working on something, I'm like, do 30 minutes and then we'll take a 15-minute break. You could do whatever you want. And I think we have to remember to do that as adults too, because we overwhelm ourselves and then we don't get the results fast enough. So then we want to give up. And that's with anything in business. Oh, I'm not getting clients fast enough. Well, how much are you doing? And are you trying to do too much at once?
Are you expecting all of these changes right at the beginning before you get through your 30 sessions?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. That happens a lot. But yeah, I mean, even in general, like you got to make small incremental changes to make a big change, in my opinion. You all have heard, what do you say? Like eat the elephant one bite at a time or something like that. Yeah. I don't know a lot of sayings. I always mess them up, but
no, that's the truth. Elephant, it's one bite at a time.
Yeah, it's the truth about your health. It's the truth about your business, becoming an entrepreneur, doing, even now, like I do all the little things that I really don't want to do. This morning, I was following up with people that I didn't want to really even follow up with, but I knew I had to because I need more business. I want more business. So, and instead of me following up with 30 people, I followed up with 5. Because then I'm like, all right, 5. And then maybe in an hour, I can follow up with 5 more, things like that. And so that's the same with your health. If you want to work on getting better, do a 10-minute walk instead of 30 minutes. Like don't create realistic goals.
Yeah.
You know?
Melissa, you're a rock star. I asked you for just a little bit of time. We're almost at an hour. I want to make sure we get a couple of these questions in. And maybe if we're super nice to her, then maybe I can get her back on another call at some point in the future. You're phenomenal. I love you. This is great. Okay, real quick, couple of questions. Is neurofeedback something that, especially, I mean, you mentioned the pediatric societies kind of said this is part of therapy. Is it something that some insurances will cover? Is it typically?
Some insurance does cover it. Because I'm not a medical provider, so it is considered a psychology therapy. It's in the mental health world, right? So you're going to find it at licensed counselors' offices, these are the people that can usually try to bill the insurance if they choose to, or if your insurance covers it. So obviously it's going to depend on your insurance first, where you're located, the provider who's billing, they have to be able to bill. So I'm not able to bill. So everyone does pay out of pocket. I have payment plans, things like that. But there are codes that counselors, psychologists, medical doctors can bill for if you could find a provider.
So some offices may be able to, your locations don't currently have that capability. Okay.
Correct. I would have to like hire on a medical doctor to oversee. I've done my business this way many years, and insurance really on the provider side, just so you guys know, insurance usually really sucks. So
it's such a hassle dealing with insurance.
And they don't usually cover, like, you know, people think that the session's being covered. It's like $15, you know, they'd have being covered. So yeah, but it does. I mean, it's worth checking into your insurance. All you have to do is call your insurance and ask. Well, if you guys email me, which I'm sure you guys will get my info, I could give you the CPT code. So when you call your insurance, you could check, and then you could just Google a neurofeedback therapist near you. And you'll be,
if you're looking for that.
Neurofeedback is worldwide. Actually, a lot of the research comes from the international community. And they're amazing. They're great, great research.
Okay, so if someone wants to do the in-home, I'm not going to get into pricing here, but you had said that they don't necessarily have to come into your facility first in order to be able to do that. Is that correct?
Correct. The ideal situation is wherever you are, if we could find someone to do the initial scan on you, the initial QEEG, that would be ideal. And then I can use that to determine the best protocol for the home unit if you want to work directly with me, which you would be. We mail you the system. I have people in Florida, Colorado, Washington State, all have home units right now from me. So, and then we check in weekly with you as you do your sessions. There's a whole training for us to show you how to hook up. And so it's not like we're like, here you go, figure it out.
So it's possible even if they're not right there. And what they can do is, again, Braintrain Centers, Inc. I'm going to give you guys this in the Skype group again, and you guys can reach out to Melissa, you know, if you decide you want to take that step. Okay.
Yes.
So,
and there's some in Texas. My next place is Austin, where I'm going to try to be opening up, a little north of Austin. But I have colleagues also that use the same exact software and equipment as me, over 350 throughout the US. So please reach out to me, and I will absolutely give you their information, and you can reach out to them. They may run their business a little different from me, but they're doing neurofeedback is what we do. So even if you did the initial assessment, Round Rock is where I'm going to be opening, I think.
There you go.
Yeah.
Careful with that guy if he walks into the office.
Uh-oh.
Tell you about him later.
You did put my info, and you guys can all email me through there. Not my cell, but the business line on my website goes directly to my cell phone. So it's just a different number than my personal cell. But you could text me on that number, and also a virtual assistant that helps me with stuff. So. Awesome. And I do travel. So I'll be in Florida, in Tampa, Florida in May. And anytime I travel, I actually bring my equipment with me just in case I meet someone that needs a brain scan.
That's the way you do it. Running a business all the time. All right. Yeah. Melissa, we're at an hour. I appreciate you so much for coming on. Today was awesome. I love this stuff. Like, it just gets me excited and thinking about things, and then thinking about future training. So yeah, tomorrow, guys, we're talking about vision boards. We talk about, I guess we'll add some journaling into that, because our expert has said that writing is important. So we're going to add that into effective visualization. But if everybody wants to come on and just say thank you real quick to Melissa, and unmute yourselves and say thanks. And I have a feeling you'll probably
very much, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This was great.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Definitely reach out. And I did see someone talk about possible like partnerships or getting trained. I help people either partner with me or start their own. I work with the company selling the equipment as well. So
Thank you very much, Melissa.
Thank
you. Thank you so much, guys. Make sure that you are here tomorrow. Come in. We got some cool training for you. We're going to keep this going, talking about brain health. Thank you so much, Melissa, for being here.
Thanks, Melissa. Really good.
I'll come on again.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Make it a great day, partners.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet. Just go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you